Okay, we are going to unwrap the Gladius. This is the model that we left off at, and this video is going to go through basic processes of what the unwrap allows us and offers us, and I'll show you some basic tools to help you create a solution. And I won't be so what I want you to do is replicate a lot of these steps and post it into your slideshow. So we'll start off with our first one. Good habit, witness a new object. We'll go ahead and collapse it down. I know what I'm after, and I know that this is going to be a starting point. So I'm going to go ahead and hit a new save. So I'm going to hit save as. I'm going to save over an older file. And the next step I want to do is add the unwrap modifier. Now in this process, this exercise, what I want you to do is unwrap the sword 3 different ways, and then we'll put all 3 into substance and look at how each unwrapping solution is handled. So let's go ahead and get started with the first one. With the unwrap, what we want to do is just look at our geometry as if it were flattened out like a paper model. When we look at this, we see that none of this stuff really makes any visual sense to us, and so I'm going to go into the polygon sub-object level. Inside of the editor window, I want to go to where mapping, flatten mapping. You'll get a pop-up. Go ahead and hit OK, and you'll see that now we have our sword set up in what's called UV islands. I'm going to toggle off the gray checker. I'm going to pull off the sword. Actually, hold up. And so when we see this, I'm just going to grab some of these smaller pieces and put them in a different little organizational spot. I personally like to organize pieces together a little bit better than have them kind of stuck up here in random order. Now our object is long and our handles are small, so we have a variety of options here. When we look at this first solution, you'll see that there's a huge gap missing in the texture, and there's a lot of area where our 1024 or 2048 or bigger texture will not utilize the pixels, and so we need to fix that. So first thing I want to do is select everything. I'm going to organize this by clicking the pack button. So I'm going to click on the pack button because that'll just organize things a little bit differently. And let me see if I can try this. The software has different variety of ways of handling the scenarios. So I'm going to grab all of those and hit and pack those. So just scale these down. Then this is where I'm going to leave solution 1. So I'm going to close that window, and I'm going to use the move tool, hold shift in the front view, and slide this over in the negative X or to the left side of the viewport. I'm going to call this solution 1. Cool. Collapse that down. So right click, convert to editable poly. Now our unwraps for this solution have been established into our geometry, and it's ready for export. Alright, so let's continue where we were with our last object. So I'm going to hit Alt Q, which will isolate our object, and we're going to look at our UV solution, and we'll see that we're here right where we left off with solution 1. Now, let's go ahead and take a look at these guys. There's a couple of things that I like about what we have built. One, so you can see the bottom of the pommel. Let's click on Select by Element. The bottom of the pommel and the top of the guard are very flat, and they have been unwrapped as such. Those are easy to grab. So the blade, the guard, and the pommel structures, which are flat, are easy to handle. Sweet. Speaking of handle, if I select everything that I have left, which is mostly the whole handle mechanism, guard, handle, and pommel, we can look at the whole thing, and what I see is a cylindrical shape in general terms. And what I'm about to do is going to be a fast, easy way to get everything welded up in the UV structure, so it's a single UV island, but it's going to create distortions. So I'm going to go into the actual modifier and the actual viewport, and I'm going to go to projection, click on cylindrical projection. When I have the items that I want to do this particular function with selected, it'll focus on just those sub-objects. So when I click on this, it'll go into cylindrical projection mode, And now that I'm in this mode, you'll see that I have all of my polygons kind of squished into this area. If I go into my viewport and look around, you'll see that the actual unwrap gizmo is situated well above my selection, and it looks even scaled beyond the size of the selection. So what I'm going to do here is go ahead and hit Fit, which is also found in the Projection Modifier tab, and that'll actually structure our handle to the gizmo to match our handle. From here, if I want to do any kind of editing, I have to actually deactivate the function of the projection, cylindrical projection function, so that I can actually modify my geometry. At this point, I can scale this down a little bit, and I can squeeze these pieces into here. Now, this is a much more filled space of what my geometry is doing, but however, where I have interesting connections, such as the skinny points meeting up with the handle and the guard, or the guard and the pommel, I'm going to probably see some distortion and some stretching. But this is a very good solution too. Hit collapse 2. I'm sorry, excuse me. We're going to make another copy. Hold shift and move to the right, or to the positive X. Hit OK. And I'm going to convert to editable poly. Alright, that leaves us, oh yeah, and rename this to Gladius Solution 2. Great, I'm going to give it another color just so that it stands out away from the others. Go ahead and show Solution 1, Solution 2. Slide this in a little bit. Now, let's get into the more refined, slower method of doing our production work. Alt-Q to hide it, Alt-W to go into here, open up the editor. Now here's our structure here, and I don't want the distortion. If I turn on the checkerboard and I want to see the checkerboard on here, this allows us to actually see how our proportions are. You'll see that the wavy distortions are the fact that things are coming from a wide angle to a narrow end, like a tapered face or polygon, and that will create the wiggles and the little wonkiness in UVs. That's almost impossible to build unless you actually structure UVs properly. Like I said, this was a rushed, fast method of getting a UV on there. It's not necessarily the greatest, but right now it's okay. If I were to go back and grab this particular set of faces, since these are the faces that are troublesome, the ones with all the distortion, hit mapping, hit flatten mapping. It'll flatten just our structures, and then we can go here and scale that down. And now what I want to do is actually organize this in a little bit more methodical way. I want things that are hanging out together to actually stay together, but I want to actually make sure that everything stays as a square in here and matches up nice and cleanly. Where these seams are kind of slopping around, I want to find a way to make that better. So I'm going to select by element and select the things that are the handle. Now here I'm going to turn off select by element, and I want to do what's called stitching. I like to stitch edges, and typically what I do is I select an edge, and it should show where your partner is. So if I go and looking for my edge that's in my 3D view, you'll see that this edge and this edge. So if I go up here and select this edge here, you'll see that I select this, and I would imagine this one. It's hard to tell. That one, right. So let's go ahead and hit 4. Select this way. I'm going to rotate this dude this way and get them lined up, and then slide it over so I can just see clean relationships. Turn that off, go back to edge mode, and I select this. Now it should show blue in here, but it's not. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and select a couple of these faces here, and I'm just going to be able, that allows me to grab the gizmo that will allow me to move, rotate, and scale all of my faces. When you have single edge, it becomes difficult to grab. But by doing some scaling or rotating, all of a sudden you'll see that the blue line, its partner, is displayed. So let's do that again. Just kind of wiggle that thing so that it shows up. When there's a blue item inside the actual editor window, that means that they're basically the same edge inside of the 3D viewport. So I'm going to go here, right click, and hit Stitch Selected. And that'll stitch them up. I did one edge to stitch another edge. And the reason why I did that is I want to make sure that the connection for the rest of the edges are clean. Since these are clean, I can go ahead and select one and grab those vertices, and then right click and hit weld selected. Okay, that's going to be a tedious long job for something that I see is clearly just a cylindrical object, but I'm not going to look at these guys as part of the cylindrical structure. So instead, I'm going to grab these faces and repeat that projection modifier setup. Projection, fit, see that it's just the handle. If I want to grab that, I'm going to go ahead and grab those faces too. So I'm going to grab this. Now I want to grab these faces, so I'm going to hold Control. And the software has by default ignore back face activated, which means if the normals are facing away from the camera viewport camera, you won't be able to select them. So make sure you move your mouse around, your object around, to make sure you're getting everything you want. There's that piece right there. So now I'm going to repeat that cylindrical projection. That now welds that set of geometry to the rest of the geometry. Deactivate that and put this over here in a little bit better structure. Now I want to do kind of the same thing for these other pieces, but I get a lot of collapsing of the geometry from a wide face to a narrow, from a big edge to a narrow edge, and that'll create distortion. So we want to minimize that. And a lot of times, that the way that the software has broken this up has a truth to the solution for sure. Like the curvature I want to keep, but I want to reduce the island count. So I'm going to grab an edge here. I can hit stitch selected. Grab an edge here, hit stitch selected. And as I do this, I'm going to create more confusion and overlap, and that's something I definitely want to avoid. The neat thing is that once I start getting some islands established and getting some structures established, I can actually go back and repack everything as I need to. Now we're going to be running out of pixel space, texture space, because we're going to see a lot of these things. Stay selected. Let's undo that. I'm going to just do one thing here. I'm going to go to vertex mode, right click, target weld. I can grab one dude and then go to another dude and try to minimize the amount of distortion I'll have it across all of those faces. Stitch selected. So like I was saying, this will have the least efficient text pixel layout. We won't be able to grab all the pixels, and it's going to be a bunch of odd shapes. So it won't maximize the size and amount of space we got, but it'll give us the cleanest solution for unwrapping. Let's go ahead and hit pack and see what we got here. Undo that. Let's just unpack. Let's just pack the guys that we have here. Uh-oh. Interesting. I have more geometry all of a sudden. I may keep the rings. Okay, so I'm going to repack everything, and now what I want to do is kind of get this organized a little better to maximize my space here. So there's certain things I want to do for sure. So I'm going to go to select my element, which is 4 on the keyboard, and hit 3, which is polygon. And let's go ahead and just get some pieces situated. To allow us a little bit better use of our organization. We're essentially going to be playing Tetris here. So I'm going to go ahead and start getting these things into a better scaling solution. We'll start with something like that. We want to minimize the amount of overlap we have. Now when we do our flat or our pack tool, there is a no rescale function. Doesn't always work. Okay, cool. That did not rescale, which is great. Let's pack that in there. Now let's take this. Put this up here. How long have we gone? 15 minutes, great. And just package in here as best you can. If you're going to scale everything and any of these pieces, you want to try to make sure you scale them together and uniformly, which is the tricky part because you'll scale stuff and then you'll have to reorganize stuff. Alright, and there's our solution 3. It's a mix between speed and filling out the textile space, but it's a lot more accurate and offers us clean structures that are all proportionate. There's going to be some interesting tiling that we're going to have to deal with. It's going to offer us some extra work in the texturing side of things. But when we go look through everything, we want to minimize areas like this, where we have that overlapping, so I'm going to grab that. You can grab multiple vertices and hit weld selected. If the vertice is welded in the 3D space, it'll weld together in the texture space. If they are not, they will not weld together. Like as an example, this guy and this guy are actually welded at this vertice right here, which means that it will not weld with this vert here. So if I grab that and hit weld selected, nothing will happen. Put that over where I need it. There we go. Put that right there. Click that. Weld selected. Cool. There's our solution 3. Collapse this down.